Hey friends, welcome back. Now let's get a little bit more advanced and import the data we have discovered in the last video. So you can see here I already opened a complete new Power BI file. So if you still have the beginners file open, then I would just encourage you to save this somewhere and open a new file. So let me just close the pop-up window and then let's actually import the data from the Excel file, which we have seen in the last video. So you can either, again, click on import data from Excel, or you can go to get data, go to Excel, or you can click on Excel here directly. I will do this one. And then I choose the PBI training 1 file, which we have seen. And let me click on open. And then just wait until the navigator opens, and here it is. And this shows us now here all the tables we have, as well as all the sheets, which are also in here. Now, as I said, best practice, we only want to import the data we need in Power BI, so that's why we go with the table structure in here. And also this is just a general tip for you later on as well. The less data you import, the better and faster your report will be. So always make sure that you only import the data inside your model which you really need. And if you don't need the data, don't import it. Okay? So let's do that. What do we need? Well, I want to see my salespeople, so let me tick this. And I also want to see the sales, I want to see the product, location, and then the customer data. So I don't need the budget in this case, and I also don't need the date. To select the tables, I can either do it manually, or what you could also do is, if you hold your shift key, you can select the first one, and then hold your shift key, and then go to the last one, which would be location here, and tick this option. And now you see that you have selected all of them, right? This could also be an option. Then I also would like to select the customer, that's what I said, and these are actually the tables I need. You can also see a little preview here, as well as if the underlying data source changed. Remember, you can click on this refresh option here to see the latest changes in the source. As soon as you're done, then we want to, and now be aware, we don't want to click on load, we want to click on transform data. So if you click on load, that would mean that we load all the tables in the current form inside Power BI. You could still then go to transform data later on, so this option here, to go to the query editor again. But in this case, we want to do a few transformation steps up front. That's why we want to click on transform data. This is why, from my personal view, currently this is a little bit misleading because the button here in yellow simply means that most people probably would click here. But what we actually want to do is we want to open the query editor first. So meaning if you click on load directly, Power BI will automatically load all the data, in this case the selected tables, inside the Power BI file here. If you click on transform data, then this would not happen immediately. Instead, you'll see, let's click that, then now the query editor opens. You see that the queries are processed. Now the query editor opens, here it is, and it's a separate window in here, which allows us to do our transformations. And for now, let's have a look. Let me just double click here to make it full screen. And then you see here all the different kinds of tables available. And if you tick them, you can see a preview of the data in here. And what you can also see is the name in here, which can be renamed. Let's do that actually for salespeople, as well as for the data in here. So let's say for the salespeople, I actually go in here, and instead I want to only use this here for salespeople. Okay, you can give it a name, press enter, and if you do that, you'll see that also the name up here for the table changes. The same is true for all the data options here. So if I select product here, and I choose product, so only product, get rid of the underscore data, you see that also the name changes here. And the second option would be if you select the table and you double click on it, you can also directly name it in here. So for instance, remove here the underscore data at the end. You can do that, press enter, and then you can also rename it here. So both options are possible for you. Either you double click here or you change the name in the property section on the right side, like that. Both work, okay? So let's do that, and now we have all our tables named properly. So far, so good. Also, please note something very interesting, which is here the applied steps window. You see here that Power BI automatically applied a few steps for us. And let me actually maybe go to one of the sales tables here. So here we see the steps are source, navigation, and change type. Now what does this mean? Well, if you click on one of the steps, simply click on it like that, you'll see that this is what the data source looked like at the beginning. So you see here a name, you see all the data itself, which contains tables. And if you do not click on table directly, click next to it. If you click, for instance, in here, you get a little preview at the bottom here. You can make this bigger if you want. What's actually inside this table? So that means in this specific step, all what Power Query in this case did was simply scanned the data which we want to import, which are these ones, and also specified, okay, this is a table in here, the item, it is a sheet, so it's an Excel worksheet, and it is not hidden. So these are just a few additional features or traits which the specific item has. Then in the next step, this is where actually the table itself, because here you can see the data in the table, gets expanded. So if you click on navigation, if I click that option, then you see now I can see what's inside the table of the sales 2022. And the third step, which is the change type, which is also automatically applied, is if you take a closer look at the headers currently, you see it's ABC123. This means, for all the columns, this means that currently Power BI has not figured out what kind of data type the specific column has. And that's what the change type automatically did. So if I click on change type, now you see that each icon here has either ABC, or this should be a little calendar icon, or 123 as a whole number. So a specific data type has been attached to each column. And that happens automatically for us. These are the steps in here. And this step is really helpful because you can click any step, prior step, and see exactly what the data looked like. Especially if you have modified quite a lot inside the Power Query editor. So with all the transformation options which are in the ribbon bar available, and you get a lot of steps, you always have the option to click on a specific prior step and see what the data looked like there. Also, if you want to remove a step, you can click on the cross symbol here. That's why please be aware that if you want to go to a step, simply click somewhere in the middle, like here, for instance. But if you want to remove a step, then you want to click on the cross symbol. You can also right click here and actually rename a step if you want to do that. So if you want to give it a more or better name, because sometimes the default names might be not that helpful, especially if someone else maybe takes a look at the steps you have been applied and you want to be a little bit more precise to help people understand what you have done. Also for yourself, of course. If I, for instance, want to change something, let's say I want to change a data type here for the quantity, I can click on the little icon here, and then you can see all the data types which are available. And if I click on decimal number, 123, that's 1.2, sorry, click on it and say I have now the option to replace the current step or add a new step. The reason why this is asked, because in the current step, the type was already changed. For me now, because I want to add a new step, just to show this to you, I will click on Add New Step. And if I do that, you now see the data type for the column has changed. Now it's 1.2, so it's a decimal number. And also I have this change type step 1, which is exactly doing this. The specific step which I've done to modify it from a whole number to a decimal number. And if I want to get rid of this, I simply click on the cross symbol here, and you'll see that then the 1.2 gets removed and it gets 123 again, which is a whole number. So let me click the cross symbol here, and now you see I get my original data back, so the format back. So that's how this applied step window works. It's quite helpful, especially as I said, if you have a lot of steps, because this can become quite difficult, of course, if you create or have to actually do a lot of transformation and cleaning steps, and then it might be helpful actually to have this applied step window to see exactly what you have done in each step. So let's have a closer look to our queries here. So for now, let me just right click in here and say I want to create a new group. I'll do this most often because it helps me to then specify, especially if I have a lot of tables, which of the tables are important to me and which are related to the model, and which tables I only use for staging. By staging, I mean I might import data in tables, but I don't want to use those tables in the model actually. I just want to, transform those tables. And we will see this in a minute when it comes to our sales tables. But for now, let me just create a group here. Let's say these are our model tables. Model TBLs. I can give it a description. For instance, here are all relevant tables for our model. So click OK. And then you see now we got a new folder in here. And I want to add now specific tables to my folder. And for me, I know that I want to use customer, location, product, and also salespeople. So I can hold my control key to select several of them, also salespeople, and then I can drag and drop them into the models table, like that. So this is something, just to mention this, which I personally like to do. It does not give you any additional, advantage doing this, beside, of course, knowing exactly, okay, these are the tables I'm using in my model, and you have a little bit of structure in here. Okay, so as I said, you don't have to do it, but I personally prefer doing this, especially if I have a use case like that. Because now, let's figure out what actually do we want to do with our sales tables. In Power BI, the best kind of structure you can have is normally one fact table. A fact table is a table which contains all the relevant, most often numerical figure, like for instance sales in this case. So our goal is actually to create one big fact table, which is one big sales table. And then we want to have additional so-called dimension tables, which are the upper ones, which then are connected and give more information to the sales table. So that means we need to combine all those three tables. So 2020, 2021, and 2022. And we can do this because they all have the same structure. So that's fine. But as I said, currently we have three different tables. So what do we do? Well, if you take a closer look under Home, there's the option under Combine to append queries. Appending queries simply means that we stack them together. And that's exactly what we want to do. So we simply want to use 2022, we want to put 2021 below, and then below we want to put 2020, like that. And we can do this by appending those queries. So if I click on Append Queries, I can either click here directly or take a closer look at this little down arrow here. And if you click on the down arrow here, you have two options. You can either append queries or append as new. Now the difference is if I would append queries here, for instance, and I have 2022 selected, which I currently have, I would append 20 and 21 to this 22 table and therefore modify the original 2022 table. On the other hand, if I append queries as new, so if I click this option, let me take this, then I create a complete new table, which I can specify what tables do I want to append to. And in my case, I have 3 or more tables, not only 2. That's why I tick this option, 3 or more tables. And then you can see, currently it's sales 2022. And let me add actually sales 2021 as well. And also if I hold my control key, I can select the second one here as well and click on add. And then I move all of them together into this new table. You can also, if you tick them, then change the sorting. So for instance, put 2021 at the top or 2020 at the top. In this case, it doesn't really matter for me. So that's why I leave it like that, starting with 2022, 2021, and then 20. Now, as soon as I click OK, let's click it. Let's see what happens. Now we got one new table, append 1. And this table is simply the sum of all the 3 sales tables. And I can easily check this if I click on the order date column. If I go here, click on it. So this allows us to filter the data, kind of similar to Excel. And if I click on load, just to see all of them, you can see I got 2020 in here. If I scroll down, I can see 2021 in here as a date, and also I can see 2022 in here. So that gives me now the, or tells me that exactly what I wanted it has happened. So I appended all 3 tables here to one big table. And this only happened, remember, because instead of clicking on append queries directly, I click on this little down arrow and said I want to append the queries as new. Otherwise, if I would have selected the 2022 here and append queries, then 2021-20 would have been appended to this table and not a new table would not have been created. That's the only difference. So I prefer it this way, to have a separate table for that. And then I can name this here my, in this case, sales. Okay, so I'll name it sales, sales. I press enter. Now you see that I got my sales table in here. And finally, of course, I also want to drag this table up in here to my model view. Let's leave it here. Okay, so far so good. And then I can, one last thing here for my other queries, I want to disable the load. What I mean by that is I only used the 3 tables in here to create my giant facts table, so my sales table in here, which I want to use in my model. But these ones, I don't want to use them. And I don't want them to see in the model. So that's why I right click on one of them. And you see there are 2 checkboxes here, enable load and include in report refresh. And what we want to do is we want to disable the load. So if I untick the enable load, you see that now it's written in italic. It's a little bit small, but you probably see that if you do it yourself. And I will do the same for the second one, disable the load. And also for the third one, disable the load. So that means that those 3 tables are now not loaded into Power BI, not into the model. Only the sales table itself. And the other option here, just to mention this, include in report refresh, it's grayed out, but we still have it here selected, especially because remember that when we refresh the data, for instance, sales has changed, then of course we also want to have the refreshed, so the latest data, in our modified or created sales table in here. So this is something we want to have, but we don't want to see those tables. That's why we disable the load for the Power BI model, but we still have the sales, so the data itself, included in our refresh to see the latest data. Okay? And as soon as we've done this, then we are basically done for preparing the table so far. And then as soon as you click on close and apply, you could then go directly back into the report view. So let me do that for now. Let's try that. Click on close and apply. And then you see that now the loading starts. So before the data was only in Power Query, but now the tables get loaded into the model. And you'll see now in the fields list all the various tables. And you also see that there's only one sales table in here, this one, with all the columns. You can see them here. And the other 3 sales table are not visible because we did not load them. And if you then say, for instance, there's still something you want to modify, you can always simply go to under Home, go to Transform Data. You can click this option. And if you do that, then the query window appears again. And you'll see here all the transformations you have done. And then you can continue, change something, adding something, and so on. Okay, so that's it. Hopefully you understood what we did and you followed along. Thanks a lot for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, best guys.